Welcome back to the Building Bigger Lives podcast. Today is going to be fun because we are talking to Michael about his recent journeys on a trip. We like to talk about some fun things sometimes on the podcast and not all business because we know that you might not just only do business, you have this other side. And it's fun to talk about how we structure getting away, what we may do going away, why we go away, all those things. So hopefully this is helpful for you as well. So with that, welcome back, Michael.
Yeah, glad to be back in the US of A, but never disappointed to get over to the great nation of Italia. It was a great time.
Good, good. Well, first, let's set this up a little bit. So I know because I got to see the planning in advance, but it takes some time to get these things on the
Mm.
calendar and planned. So, kind of let's go back a little bit. When did you start to get this on the calendar? How did you plan it with your friends and your family to make this actually happen?
Well, we're pretty good about on trips like this getting these at least blocked out about a year in advance, and then we work on them as they get closer. But the short story is we have some really great friends down in Scottsdale who went on a trip to Italy last year. They went to Bologna, to be specific. They went on a specific vacation package called Culture Discovery, and it's all about an immersion in the local culture. So whether it's the place that you stay, the food you eat, the family you're with. I mean, it's a very interesting approach. And they went with another couple that we're good friends with from Scottsdale, and they came here to Oregon to visit us last summer, and all they could do was talk about how amazing this was. And so during the time they were here, like, we should do this again next year. Where should we go? And they looked up the website for which trips were available through Culture Discovery, and Amalfi Coast was available. And we all said, oh my gosh, that's a place that we've all been interested to go. So that's the short answer. Was it was last summer that we put this thing on the books and then had to start working toward it. And what was fun was we were able to invite another couple that was from our friend group in Scottsdale. And then I even put the word out to a couple from San Diego that I've known Mark since high school, and he stood in my wedding. And at the time, I put this out there thinking, hey, maybe they'll want to come join us at the tail end of the trip, and we'll go do another week with them. But when he heard about what we were doing the week before, he's like, hey, if that thing's open to the public, we'll sign up. I want to join that trip. And it was amazing. I mean, have you been to the Amalfi Coast? I know you've been to Italy.
No,
Okay,
no.
well, it's right on the walls of all of these amazing cliffs, look overlooking the Mediterranean, and it's just a series of villages. There's really no way to describe how picturesque this thing is. I mean, I'm sure Instagram is full of all kinds of amazing videos of people going to Positano or all these places that they go. It's every bit as amazing as the videos would suggest. I just can't believe how much fun it was.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna make everyone wait though to hear about how much fun it was because I want to make sure that people understand the setup to go. So in the weeks leading
Take
up
Takes
to
a lot of work.
this,
Takes a lot of
yeah.
work. As you say, the setup, I'm talking about, booking it, but you're right. I mean, there's stuff on the personal side and the professional side that requires a lot of work. I mean, from our coaching cadence, I've got clients who often are expecting us to check in about every 2 weeks. Well, when you go on a 2 week vacation, that's going to throw your cadence off a little bit. And not only does it push everything back, but now everything condenses. When you get back, it's a crazy week that you're coming back to. So not
Hmm.
only did you just, you're gone for this amount of time, but you've got a lot. Now, I take the attitude of I'm super grateful for that. I'm super grateful that I have this problem where a lot of clients want to meet the week I get back. So that
Hmm.
is definitely not a complaint, but it's a lot of logistics. And then you look on the other side of it at home, we've got, Maddie with her two cats. We've got Harley, our dog. So there's, pet management. Maddie has a lot of unique things with her med management. So we had to have, some checking with nursing and some caregivers that were handling things like that. So yeah, lots of small pieces. And so when I think about our clients who might be listening, our friends who tune into the podcast, you know how this works. You don't just make a trip to the Amalfi Coast. It's not just book a flight and you're good to go. It's all those little things, and you're right. It's weeks, and in some cases months in advance of coordinated work. In this case, between Lori and I, to just be able to get on the plane. So it was a lot of work.
And something as a takeaway is if you're going to plan a vacation, plan some buffer time on the sides if you can, or plan that out because no one likes their vacation to be ruined because they haven't prepped some things with their team, with their calendar, all of that. So just think through that as kind of the takeaway I want people to get from this quick discussion on this piece. That's why I'm digging in a little bit more on that, just
Yeah.
to make sure people think not just, oh my gosh, what an amazing trip, but that takes some work to have an amazing trip, to have their freedom, to have the space to have the trip. So now that we've covered that, let's talk a little bit about some of the highlights. So, what are some things that you're like, oh my gosh, here's some takeaways that I had from my trip that I want to make sure that I get out there? And I'm sure I'm going to have some questions.
Well, let's get this one out there right away. The pizza in Napoli is legit. It is absolutely amazing. And so we flew into Naples and we spent a couple of evenings there with our friends, just getting oriented to the time zone, having a slice of pizza or two, and getting
Mhm.
ourselves prepared to take the drive down to the Amalfi Coast. As we got down there and got settled in, we're in a villa with all of our friends on the side of this cliff, and every day you're waking up thinking, if this is what heaven looks like, I can't imagine it being prettier. It's just incredible. One of the things I would recommend if people are considering, an international trip is, and you've done a lot of this as well, is deciding what you really want out of it and then build and working backwards to build it in. And one of the things I will tell you is amazing about this couple that we travel with and the friends then that we all collected is they love to have activities every day. That's a big deal for them. Where some people go on vacation, it's the opposite. In fact, left to myself, I might be a little more that way. I like the freedom to just figure it out as I go. My whole day, my whole week, my whole life is scheduled. So the idea of a vacation being scheduled is a little bit of a I got to wrap my head around that. But if you know the audience that you're with, a planned vacation where there's a set trip or a tour in this case was really nice because every day it was centered around a major activity, a major opportunity for either eating out or cooking, which was also built in, and then something fun, something that was just light and easy. And you can opt in or opt out of those things. So that's one of the things I'd recommend people think about ahead of time as well is what do I want to get out of this trip? Who am I traveling with? You and I've talked about introverts and extroverts and an occasional introvert. If you know the style of people, it's nice to have something like that where your introverts can peel off and maybe go back and recharge if they want to, but it doesn't change the vibe of the trip because plenty of other people get to participate in the next activity. So that would be my first tip on a trip like this is, think ahead of time of what you want to get out of it and know who you're traveling with so that you can plan out your days accordingly.
And then you said, know what you want to get out of the trip. With this one, what did you want to get out of the trip?
Well, we believe strongly, and this is going to sound like a weird way to describe it. So I acknowledge this is Michael Regan and his weird description. But at some point in life, you start to realize you've got lots of friends, but you only have a few pallbearers. And what I
Mm.
mean by that is these are the people that you're going to be at their funeral or they're going to be at yours. And that's just, that's the depth of that friendship. And I want to make sure that when those are the friends that I know are in that category. I want to invest in the experiences while we're still alive because that's part of what we're doing is we're building the story of our friendship. And so these are those kind of friends for us. We really they're super important to Lori and I, and we are already, thinking ahead about what's the plan for next year. What are we doing? By the way, this is also the same couple we go on our bike trips with. So we have a different version of a activity with them there than this. And these are just memories we're building, Kathryn. I think that's what Lori and I want out of it. We want that quality time with people that we're riding all the way to the end with, and we want the memories that come with those friendships. Thankfully, this couple, and the friends that are with it, there's a lot of laughter. It's just a lot of lightheartedness. And, I don't know what life looks like for everybody that's listening, but, my life from time to time has some hard stuff that we're dealing with. And it's so nice to be on a trip with people who are light and you can just lower your shoulders and relax and have an authentically good time and nobody's putting on a mask and nobody's
Mhm.
so that's what we wanted out of it. We just wanted a week like that. I'll add one thing, not to ramble on the what I wanted out, but when you go to Amalfi Coast, you also want to experience these things that really only exist in that part of the world. There's no other place in the world that's like this. So yes, is the limoncello amazing? Yeah, it's pretty darn good. Um, but it's some of the experiences like taking the boat ride out to Capri. Incredible. taking the boat to Positano, going into the caves, getting to go to Pompeii and see a city that had been entombed for 2,000 years. And as they've excavated it, you get to see exactly what life looked like in a village 2,000 years ago. I mean, these are things that nowhere else on earth will you get to do this. So I think there are a lot of things on a trip like that that were also important
Hmm.
things we wanted to get out of it. But really, the primary motivator is going to be about the people and maybe at some point too the accommodations. That's a big deal too. The villa was great because you're all together. If you go to a hotel, everybody's kind of peeling off to their own rooms. In a villa, you still have your own rooms, but there's a lot of common space where you get to hang out together.
Yeah.
That was really special.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. So I'm going to throw a question at you that you were not prepared for. But so remember Bob Goff, he has a word for a person so that he
Mhm.
can remember, and maybe it's a word of the day, but it's either for the person or the day. It might be the day. So, and I always try to have a word for every country
Ah.
that I visit. So, what's a word that you can come up with for your trip?
Well, I guess the shortest answer has to be beauty because I've never been to a country where I've experienced more natural beauty than Italia.
Mm.
I mean, Italy is just similar to maybe how we feel in America about California. There's a lot of diversity in California. Your experience in San Diego doesn't look anything like your experience out in Palm Springs, and that doesn't look anything like, Santa Barbara, and that doesn't look anything like, Lake Tahoe, and you can go on to Napa or San Francisco. These are all in the same state, but they're radically different experiences. Italy is like that, and the level of beauty is just at another level. So whether it's the scenery, the food, the people, it's just all so beautiful. It's the most beautiful place I've been.
Wow, that's a good word. And you came up with it quickly. So that's great.
Well, it wasn't too hard. That one was, I think I was getting nervous. You had me thinking this is going to be, oh man, I'm going to come up with something tough, but yeah, beautiful.
I'll try to come up with a harder question next. So then as you're there, and part of the goal of at least what you hired this company to do is to get more immersed in the
Mm.
culture. So what are some pieces of the culture that you're like, ooh, I'm gonna try to bring that back with me, or that's the part that I'm really gonna remember about the culture?
Okay, well, you've already heard me do it a couple of times. I'm really learning that, we're American and the map says Italy, but when you're there, you're in Italia. And you're not going to Capri, you're going to Capri. And you're not eating bruschetta, you're eating bruschetta or you're eating pistachio. I think learning their language and learning the inflection of their tones turned out to be one of those cultural immersions that was
Hmm.
important to me because at some point these are their words. This is their, like, why should I Americanize their words? Now, I'm not fussy about it with other Americans. This is how, but it is funny, we just have a funny way of doing this in America. I tell people all the time that we had an exchange student from France and they're like, France, why do you say France? I'm like, what's the big global event every year? There's a bike ride, I think, there. What's that called? And they'll say, oh, the Tour de France. And I would say, yeah, exactly. They say France. That's exactly what it is. We just have this funny habit of Americanizing things, and in some cases that's okay. But I loved being in the immersion of let's learn how to say things the way they say it because it's a beautiful language, and of course
Hmm.
it goes right there with my word beauty. And it also helped you feel like you were connecting a little bit more with the local people because they love it when they see you trying, unlike France where maybe they're not always so happy to see the American tourists. The Italians love the Americans when they're trying to learn the language. When you're acting American, they maybe are a little, ugh, but they love it. They really are gracious with you. That was one of my favorite things. The other thing is our tour guide lived in there's Maori and Maggiore, these two little villages right near Atrani where we stayed in Amalfi, which is around the bend, and he grew up in that village. So our tour guide, this is his home. Like we're riding the route around the edges of those cliffs that his school bus was on every day, taking him to school. So it was really fun to be with. So shout out to Tommy Tomas. He was really great, and he was very passionate about sharing his love of his home with us. And that was evident. The other piece of the immersion that was amazing was the company brings in a host that runs the villa. So they're running like the kitchen and all the things that we do and setting up the activities for whether it's cooking classes or different wine tastings or different things we're doing. and they were all a family. So this wasn't just a bunch of independently hired people.
Mm.
It was a woman about my age, her mother and father, her brother. I mean, it was a full-on family affair, and you felt like you were being invited into this amazing home run by this amazing Italian family. And I couldn't have been happier about that. So I loved that part of it. It didn't feel like
Mhm.
staying in Americans staying in a hotel. It felt like we really
Yeah.
dived right in. It was great.
Yeah. And I feel like you get the essence of the country a lot more if you're
It's
hanging
way
out with
different.
people who are from there and not just only at hotels that are all tourists and going to the tourist places and all of those things.
That's
So,
what our second week looked like. We were the American tourists the second week. We leave after that trip to Amalfi and take a train up to Rome. And in Rome, we meet up with Sydney, our middle daughter, who's 25. I think on the day here we're recording, she's taking a flight out to Montana to work on a project. So it's kind of fun to see your daughter getting, coming back from Italy to go to this great project she's working on in Montana. But she took some time off and came and met us, and we spent 3 days being those tourists in Rome. We spent 3 days then up in Tuscany, going to Florence, and then spent 3 more days up in Venice, and that was a different experience. In many ways, great in its own right, especially because it was Lori and I with Sydney. That's got its own vibe, but different because we didn't have all those activities planned out. We were staying in the hotels and we were being more tourists. So I think looking back, Lori and I both agreed, glad we saw and experienced all those things. But I think Amalfi was our favorite week.
oh, oh, absolutely. That sounds amazing. Well, good. Any other takeaways? Anything else you want to make sure that the audience knows or thinks about as they're listening to this?
I'll give you two, and I'll only give you two because I think they come from the wisdom of Lori Regan, and so I want to
Mm.
give credit where credit is due. One is, I shared this thing about know what you want out of